The medical bay of the Zentari ship hummed with blue light as three alien doctors stood around the examination table, and their eyes widened in disbelief at the scans before them. Dr. Vela adjusted her scanning device for the third time because she could not believe what she was seeing, and her purple skin grew darker with concern as she studied the human female lying on the metal surface. The human named Amy Brooks had crashed her small exploration pod on their planet just 2 hours ago, and the impact had been severe enough to destroy the entire front section of her vessel. But somehow she had walked out of the wreckage on her own. Now the doctors counted 17 distinct fractures throughout her body, including 3 in her left arm, 4 in her right leg, 2 cracked ribs, and multiple stress fractures in her spine. And yet the human was smiling. Amy looked up at the concerned alien faces hovering over her, and she grinned, despite the pain coursing through her body because she had been through worse during her years as a test pilot back on Earth. Dr. Kress leaned closer to Amy with his long fingers trembling as he pointed at the holographic display showing her shattered bones, and he spoke in the universal translator that made his clicking sounds into words. "Your skeletal structure has sustained catastrophic damage, and we must sedate you immediately, because the pain levels should have rendered you unconscious." Amy just laughed softly and shook her head, which made the third doctor named Soren step back in alarm because movement should have been impossible for someone in her condition. "That is nothing, compared to what happened during the Mars training accident." And she said it so casually that all 3 doctors exchanged worried glances and wondered if the human brain had been damaged as well. They did not understand that humans had evolved on a death world where gravity was harsh, and predators were everywhere, and bones that could heal stronger, and pain tolerance that could push through almost anything. Vela brought over a pain measurement device and pressed it against Amy's temple, and the readings made her gasp because the human was experiencing enough pain to kill most species in the galaxy, but her vital signs remained stable. "How are you still conscious?" and Vela asked while her voice carried genuine fear because she had never encountered a species like this in her 40 years of medical practice. Amy tried to shrug, but the movement sent sharp pains through her shoulders, so she settled for another smile instead, and began to explain about human endurance. "Back home, we have athletes who run for hours in extreme heat, and climbers who scale mountains where the air is too thin to breathe, and soldiers who fight for days without sleep, and we all just keep going." The doctors listened in growing horror as Amy described her species and their tendency to ignore their own physical limitations and push beyond what should be possible. Kress pulled up Amy's medical history from her pod computers, and what he found there made his 3 hearts beat faster in alarm. She had broken bones 12 times before this incident and survived temperatures that would freeze Zentari blood and once stayed awake for 70 hours during an emergency flight, and her file listed all of this as normal for human pilots. Soren checked the bone density scans again because he thought the machine must be malfunctioning, but no. The readings were correct, and human bones were incredibly dense compared to Zentari skeletons. "Your species should not exist," and he whispered while looking at Amy with something between fear and admiration, because everything about humans defied the normal rules of biology. Amy watched the doctors move around her in their flowing robes, and she could see they were scared of what she represented. And she understood because humans were strange even to themselves sometimes. Dr. Vela prepared a healing gel that would help Amy's bones knit together faster, but even with their advanced medicine it would take weeks for a Zentari to recover from such injuries. "How long will you need to heal?" and she asked while carefully applying the gel to Amy's fractured arm. Amy thought about it for a moment and remembered how quickly she had bounced back from her last major crash, and she gave an answer that made all 3 doctors freeze in place. "About 3 weeks if I take it easy, and maybe 2 if I push through the physical therapy that is impossible." And Kress said flatly because his medical training told him that these injuries should require months of recovery time at minimum. But Amy just kept smiling because she knew something the aliens did not understand. And humans were built different, and they healed fast and adapted faster and never gave up even when they should. The next few days proved Amy right as her bones began healing at a rate that shocked the Zentari medical staff. And other doctors came to observe the strange human who defied all their expectations. Word spread through the ship about the human who had survived a crash that should have killed her, and who smiled through pain that would have broken stronger species, and who healed like she had regeneration abilities Amy became something of a legend among the Zentari, and they started to understand why humanity had survived long enough to reach the stars, despite coming from such a dangerous world. On the 5th day, Amy was all ready, moving around the medical bay with assistance, and by the 10th day she was walking without help, and the fractures were healing clean and strong. Vela visited her every day and brought questions about human biology, and each answer revealed something new and terrifying about Earth and its inhabitants. You have bacteria that would dissolve our organs and animals that could tear through our ships and plants that could poison us with a touch, and yet you call it home. Amy nodded and felt a sudden rush of homesickness for that beautiful, dangerous blue planet where everything was trying to kill you, but the sunsets were worth it. On the 15th day, the captain of the Zentari ship came to meet the human who had become famous throughout their fleet. And he asked Amy one question that would change everything. If humans are this durable, this resilient, this impossible to stop, then what happens when your people decide to expand beyond your borders? Amy looked at the captain with understanding in her eyes because she knew what he was really asking and whether humanity would be friend or threat to the wider galaxy. We just want to explore and learn and make friends. But she added with that same smile that had unsettled the doctors, and we also protect our friends with everything we have. The captain nodded slowly and made a decision that would echo through Zentari history, and he would recommend an alliance with humanity, because any species that could survive what Amy had survived would make either the best allies or the worst enemies. 3 weeks after the crash, Amy stood fully healed in the landing bay as the Zentari prepared a new ship for her journey home, and every crew member who passed by looked at her with new respect. Doctor. Vela approached one last time and handed Amy a data chip containing all their medical scans and observations. Show this to your people and let them know they impressed us. And she said quietly, and let them know the Zentari want to be friends with humans. Amy took the chip and smiled one more time before boarding her new ship. And as she lifted off into the stars, she thought about how a simple crash had turned into first contact. Behind her, the Zentari doctors watched the human ship disappear, and they all shared the same thought. And if one human could survive 17 fractures with just a smile, then what could a whole species of them accomplish? The answer would come soon enough, as humanity stepped onto the galactic stage and showed everyone what it meant to be from Earth, and the Zentari would never forget the day they learned that humans considered catastrophic injuries as nothing special.